Hello everyone, welcome back to Doodling Through Education. For my CC students, this is Cycle 3, Week 17, and today we have a history video. And in this history video, we are going to talk about the women's suffrage movement. So, like most of our history videos, we're going to talk about when this happened, why did this happen, and what was this? So before we get started, go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. That way you'll never miss an episode of Doodling Through Education. Without further ado, let's start doodling. Today we're going to talk about the women's suffrage movement. So first, what was the women's suffrage movement? This movement was a decades-long battle to win the right to vote for women in the United States. It took almost 100 years for women to win this right. During the 1820s and 30s, most of the states in the United States had already extended the right to vote to all white men, regardless of how much money they had or how much property they owned. Meanwhile, many American women were beginning to dislike this idea that a true woman was someone who was only found in the home as a mother and wife exclusively. In 1848, there was a group of people who gathered. Most of these people were in fact women, but there were some men in this group, and they gathered and met in Seneca Falls, New York. It was at this convention that they decided to discuss this problem of women's rights and the right for women to vote. They believed that when the Declaration of Independence says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that it meant not just men, but women too. And because of this meant that they believed that women should have the right to vote. In the 1850s, the women's rights movement really started to ramp up. But when the Civil War began, it sort of lost that momentum. When the 14th and 15th Amendments passed, which guaranteed black men the right to vote, a lot of the women in this suffrage movement believed that this was their golden opportunity to push lawmakers to truly allow everyone the right to vote. Fast forward to 1869, and a new group took stage, and this new group was called the National Woman Suffrage Association, and this association was founded by the women Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. These two women and their group continued this fight for the women's right to vote and to get this as an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. By the late 1800s, the approach of this association and this movement had indeed changed. Instead of arguing that women deserved the same rights and responsibilities as men because women and men were created equal, they took the approach that women deserved the right to vote because they were different from men. They believed that their differences could add to the table when considering voting. They used this idea that women were domestic to politically advance their agenda. They started to see some success in 1910 when some states in the West began to go ahead and extend this vote for women for the first time. Idaho and Utah were some of these states that had given women the right to vote at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s. Still, this was a sore subject for the South United States and the Eastern United States, and they tended to resist this. When World War I happened, as do all wars, the campaign slowed their forward progress, but they used it to their advantage to advance the argument nonetheless. During World War I, women were a vital part of the war effort, and so activists typically used this to point out that women were just as patriotic and deserving of citizenship and the right to vote as men. This all concluded on August 18th, 1920, when the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. That year, on November 2nd, more than 8 million women across the United States got to vote in elections for the very first time. And that's all we have for today on the women's suffrage movement. Talk to your parents about this. It's kind of incredible to think that it was only just about 100 years ago that women got the right to vote. And so talk with your parents about how this could have impacted the social structure in our country, and discuss this with them to see what they think, and also continue to research the lives of Elizabeth Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, because they also have had very interesting lives, and I think you'll enjoy doing that. And on that note, remember to be kind, follow God's will, and take care. Bye.